Hello everybody, welcome back to the Ocean Mystery Iceberg. If you don't know what the Ocean Mystery Iceberg is, it's this chart that I've created that's all about weird and mysterious things about the ocean. On the top you have more well-known things like the Bermuda Triangle, and as you get further down there's really strange things, and we're down really far right now. We're actually on Tier 7. But before I get into it, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching all my videos. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, but I really appreciate you guys. You guys have allowed me to travel. As you can see, I'm in a trailer park in Arizona, going to see the ocean on the west coast, so I'm really excited about that. But without further ado, let's get into it. Tier 7, Phantom Island, Bermeja. So Bermeja is this phantom island that supposedly existed off of the coast of Mexico, just off the Yucatan coast. It was this 80 square kilometer sized island that first appeared on maps in the early 1500s and was last mapped in the 1940s. There's a lot of really strange things about this island. Obviously, it's called the Phantom Island because it disappeared or was never even there. So here's the deal, most countries, wherever their islands are, they get 200 miles to do oil, and Bermeja Island would have greatly benefited Mexico. So a lot of people think that Mexico either just cling to this idea of it still existing to benefit itself to get oil, or there's a couple other conspiracies, like one that states that the CIA, I'm not saying this is real, but the CIA learned about the island, and since nobody could really prove it was there at that point, they bombed it and destroyed it so that they would have the power to drill oil in that area. But there's obviously no proof that the CIA did that for sure. It's just kind of a strange theory. There was this guy in the Mexico Senate, or he was a governor, I'm not really for sure, but he was part of the government structure who was like super pro this island, like he really thought it existed. And what's really strange is that he mysteriously died because he was trying to lobby for oil for Mexico and he somehow died. And a lot of people link it to like the CIA bombing the island and leveling it so that it never existed, but that probably didn't happen, so don't go too far into that. Anyways, like I said, this island would greatly benefit Mexico due to the exclusive economic zone that it would have 200 miles offshore. It would literally give them 15% more territory of oil-rich area, which is huge, and this would encroach on American territory, so this is where some of the conspiracy theories come from. So anyways, Mexico really wanted this island to exist, and they explored these areas during like the 1990s and in 2009, but they were never able to ever find this island. Some people hypothesize that the island did exist and that natural erosion caused the island to disappear over time, but I think this is an unlikely theory considering that the ocean floor is just flat in that area that people thought it was. But another theory is that the person who created the map just made it up to make a signature on his maps, and that's what people used to do back in the day. These cartographers would make up like a fake island or something and then put it on their map, and so if someone copied their map, then it would have this island kind of like a signature so that they could tell when people were copying what they did. And so that's what most people think it was. Anyways, there's still other speculations that this island really was there and that it just like moves, kind of like if you've ever seen the show Lost, they have that island that it's like, well, I don't want to spoil what Lost is, but it's like this island moves around and nobody can figure out where it's at, so nobody can escape and that sort of thing, so maybe it's the Lost Island. Okay, moving on to the Baltic Sea Anomoly. If you don't know what this is pretty much like this rock formation that was found back in 2011 that looks a lot like a UFO that crashed into the ocean. So in 2011, there was this Swedish-based Ocean X team that were trying to go find this old shipwreck, but they ended up finding this oval-shaped object with strange markings on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea lies between Sweden and Finland, and the sonar image that they got was really blurry, but it was really interesting. It like got really popular on the internet, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's the Millennium Falcon, because it really does look like the Millennium Falcon. It's pretty cool. They claim that their image that they got shows a 200 feet in diameter circular object that looks extremely man-made. They thought it was man-made themselves. So later on, samples of the stone that were recovered at the site by the Ocean X team were given to an associate professor of geology at Stockholm University. The analysis of the samples indicated that they were just a normally occurring formation made of normal materials. But I mean, it is really strange. There was one really interesting thing that I saw on it where people said that when they got close to it with cameras and other electrical equipment, they would shut off and not work. But I mean, I tried to watch a documentary on this and read a lot of different things on it, but it's just a whole lot of he said, she said. There's not anything too in-depth with it other than it's this rock formation that looks exactly like the Millennium Falcon. or just some sort of UFO. It looks really man-made. It really does. So there's no concrete evidence on any of this, but it's still fun to just think that maybe there's some sort of advanced underwater civilization that created this, or maybe some ancient civilization dumped this thing in the water, which would be really cool too. Okay, moving on to cosmic ocean. So the idea of cosmic oceans is like the entire world is enveloped in these cosmic oceans, which are space. So there's a lot of religions and cultures throughout history and civilizations that refer to the world or the cosmos as being enveloped in primordial waters. In ancient creation texts, the primordial waters often represent the originality of the universe, as being the entire universe is in these huge waters, and that a space was separated from these waters for us to live in. So people theorize that the creation story in the Bible kind of talks about this, like God created a space inside of the water that was separate from the primordial waters, which is the universe around Earth. Just like in Genesis 1:6, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." Now, I'm not saying this is how it is in the Bible. This is just a theory that people have came up with. But also in Genesis, the story of Noah and how the waters were opened up from the heavens and came down onto Earth. People theorize that this is part of the cosmic ocean theory as well. This is like tied in with like Hollow Earth theory and a lot of weird stuff, but it's like there's a firmament over the Earth, and above it is all water, and that the firmament was opened up and the waters came through, and that people don't go to space. Space is fake, and that everything in the cosmos is ocean except for us. We're the only solid ground. And so that's the theory. I'm not saying it's true. It's really strange. It's really wacky, but that's the cosmic ocean theory. Okay, moving on to Ningen. Ningen is a creature that appears in recent Japanese folklore. The Ningen, which translates to the word human, is a 50-foot or longer bulbous creature that was originally spotted by a Japanese research vessel off the coast of Antarctica. These are all like alleged sightings and that sort of thing. You know, it's kind of like a cryptid. So upon the first sighting of it, members of a Japanese research vessel thought that they were seeing a foreign submarine off in the distance, getting closer to it, and then they realized that it was a living animal. Their reports described it as an aquatic humanoid fish said to be roughly the size of a whale. The creature was described as being pale white, having really human-like figures, like no eyes, but kind of a nose and a mouth. I think they have a mouth. And that they have these weird arms and then a tail that goes into a mermaid-looking thing, like a whale tail. But some people claim that it has legs, like in this weird picture. It's really weird. Some other people describe it as having really minimal facial features, having like small slitted mouth and 2 eyes, while others just make it look like a no-face looking humanoid whale creature. I guess it's been spotted multiple times, primarily at night in colder waters, leading some to believe that it's been hiding in the Arctic beneath the ice. In this iceberg, I meant for the Ningen to be less of a creature and more of like an idea that there are things out there that we don't know about that might be a human-like creature that we've never seen before. And that's what I meant for this to be like. There's all kinds of creatures, like especially in the Arctic and other areas that we really haven't been able to get into, that might be out there. And I feel like the Ningen is a great representation of that, even though it's probably just a creature that probably doesn't exist. Kind of like, well, I don't want to say like kind of like the bloop, because I know a lot of you guys like that, but kind of like the bloop. Some people say things about the Ningen like it seeing like a mermaid, so maybe it came from that myth about the sirens and that sort of thing, while others say that it's just like this ambient creature that floats around and is pretty docile. Anyways, it's pretty creepy looking. I would not want to run into one. Okay, the untouchable Bathysphere fish. So this is a story of some of the earliest ocean exploration. In 1932, there was a marine biologist named William Beebe. He was exploring the abyssal depths of the Bermuda Seas in a bathysphere, which this was like a submarine looking thing that he had. It was like a really early form of submarine. Anyways, it was this spherical chamber that he would go down deep into the ocean with, which is really crazy to think about people going down there this early. It was in 1932. Anyways, once William was down there, he apparently saw 2 large 6-foot-long fish, which represented both barracudas and black dragonfish. He said they had a row of blue bioluminescent spots running down both sides of their bodies and 2 long anglerfish-like lures, one reddish located underneath the chin and the other blue located on the tail. And he named these fish the giant dragonfish, also known as the Untouchable Bathysphere fish. He also discovered 4 other mysterious fish while he was down there. These were the paladin sailfin, the abyssal rainbow gar, the 5-line constellation fish, and the 3-starred anglerfish. So this guy went down there really early in the years of ocean exploration, and he saw these fish. What's sad is he didn't get any specimens, so nobody believed him. So he didn't collect anything. The only proof he had was the descriptions that he gave of each species. But since then, no physical specimens have been discovered, not even by fishermen. So it leads one to question, did he make all this up? Or did these fish go deeper in the ocean, or did they die out? I would assume that since we've been exploring the ocean more, we would have found these things since then, especially since he just went down there and found them so quickly. So the true nature of these fish are still debated. Some speculate that BB misidentified these fish and that they were already known deep-sea creatures that he had just stumbled upon and he described them wrong, while others theorize that these fish may have gone extinct since then, which could explain why we haven't found any physical specimens of them. But some hold on to the possibility that these fish are all still down there and they're just still waiting to be discovered. But I mean, why wouldn't they still not be discovered, since the scientists assume that like 90% of ocean species still haven't been discovered yet? It could also be like vertical migration. You know, these fish, they're deep sea fish. Maybe they went deeper because people are going across the ocean more. That makes a lot of sense to me. Pretty spooky to think about. Moving on to Tier 8. Okay, the Eltanin Antenna. So this was an ocean anomaly. It was a really strange situation that happened. On August 29th, 1964, the USNS Eltanin, a floating laboratory created by the National Science Foundation of the United States, was engaged in photographing the ocean floor 1,000 miles off the coast of Cape Horn with a cable-mounted camera at a depth of approximately 13,000 feet, when they stumbled upon a remarkable find. So along this mostly bleak and barren bottom that they were in of the ocean, they managed to snap pictures of a very strange structure. This structure stood upright about 2 feet high and was in the middle of nowhere on the lifeless seabed, and it had symmetrical arms, spokes, and protrusions ending in spherical tops. It looked very much like an elaborate artificial radio antenna thingy. Photographs of the object immediately caught the attention of this UFOologist, who dubbed it the Eltanin Antenna, and claimed that it was an out-of-place alien artifact put there in that remote location for unknown purposes. So since it was so far underneath the surface in this really hostile and inaccessible environment, there was like no way to reach it again, and no efforts were made to ever try and relocate it. But a more plausible hypothesis is that this object could have been a type of deep-sea carnivorous sponge, which was discovered almost a century before in 1888. But this is all really strange, because if this sponge was here, what was it feasting on? It was in the middle of this barren wasteland really deep in the ocean. There have been a lot of arguments against this idea of it being the carnivorous sponge. One of the arguments is that the scientists that were on this vessel could not figure out what it was on their own, which was really strange because you would think they would know what a carnivorous sponge was. Another argument is that this species of sponge is known to exist in large colonies, where this one was just in solitude in potentially a desert of nothingness in the ocean. There's also the fact that when compared to the photos of the type of sponge that it was, it did not seem to match. It looked somewhat different, especially considering that it was obviously more symmetrical than most things found in nature. So if it's a carnivorous sponge or some sort of alien antenna is something that I will let you decide. I think it was probably a Cthulhu antenna. Alright, moving on to the ocean at night. So I talked about vertical migration before. Vertical migration is the fact that whenever large ships move over the top of the ocean, bigger species tend to go deeper. So here's the deal with the ocean at night. So large predators that hunt during the day, they all use eyesight. So at night, deeper sea prey will come up to the surface so that they can eat like plankton and stuff that's up there. So this causes large deep sea predators to also come to the surface to eat the prey that's normally down there. Because these things don't need eyesight to hunt, they can hunt completely in the darkness. So the idea of the ocean at night is that these deep sea predators come up to the surface, just like I said, and potentially it becomes a really dangerous place. So in 2010, there's this project called the Artificial Sun, which was conducted in the Gulf of Aden. It involved a bright thermal reactor which had to be placed into the ocean to keep it from overheating. During this project, there was 82 earthquakes reported in a 48-hour period around this area. Shortly after, 27 different world navies sent their ships to fight pirates around the area. However, supposedly there was these leaked text logs that showed that there is a giant vortex in the area that they were actually responding to instead. which this led a lot of people to believe that since it was night, and the monsters came to the surface, or the predators came to the surface, they saw this giant light that was man-made, and they were not happy about it. It was some sort of super intelligent predator that lives deep in the ocean that we don't know about, and it started, I don't know, doing whatever it does with vortexes and earthquakes, potentially like a Cthulhu-looking thing, but that's pretty much the idea of what it is. It's like, the ocean at night is really dangerous. Don't go to the ocean at night because these monsters might be closer to the surface, and that's why, people in the past that were sailing across the ocean had so many problems. Because, think about how long they had to be out in the ocean to cross different oceans. Oh my gosh, it would be so scary to be out there in the middle of the night and something's bumping your boat, or there's a rogue wave that somehow hits you and turns you over, and then you got to deal with trying to survive in the ocean. You can't breathe, and yeah, it's just bad. I was also watching this other video that talked about how there was this guy who was doing like a marathon swim, and that he was there at night for some reason, swimming really far, and the boat that was following him, they usually have boats that follow these people that do these marathons, this boat that followed him put the floodlights on top of him, and so he was swimming in the ocean, floodlights on top of him, middle of the night, and a cookie cutter shark came up and bit a chunk out of his leg. Now, what's really strange about this is that this cookie cutter shark probably had absolutely no idea what he was. This shark probably had never seen a human ever in its entire life. Think about how many cookie cutter sharks actually even see humans. Probably almost none. So there's definitely all kinds of creatures that come up to the surface that have never seen people, or any man-made anything for that instance. So this thing took a bite out of something it didn't know. It was a human. So who's to say other giant marine predators wouldn't do the same that are deep in the ocean? Okay, the Flannan Isle mystery. This is a really interesting story. So on December 15th, 1900, this ship was passing this lighthouse that was supposed to be in operation, and they noticed that there was no light on it. So they shot a flare up, and they didn't respond at all. So they were like, that's really strange. We should probably go check that out. And so they did, and there was nobody there at all, which was really strange. So the ship docked and noticed that nobody was on board. So this lighthouse island that they had just arrived at was just off the coast of the United Kingdom in the Flannan Islands. It was manned by 3 men at the time, James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. So upon their arrival, the crew that noticed that they were gone found that the flagstaff had no flag. None of the usual provision boxes had been left on the landing stage for restocking, and none of the lighthouse keepers were there to welcome anybody. The captain of the Hesperus attempted to reach them by blowing the ship's whistle, and he shot a flare. He was unsuccessful, like I said, so that's why they came aboard the island. So one man went up on the island to see what was going on, and he found the entrance gate to the compound to be closed, all the beds were unmade, the clocks were unwound. Some sources claim that the table was set for a meal, and that it had just not been eaten. They had just left with the meal uneaten. So everything looked completely normal. All the doors were shut to the house. So this seemed strange, the way the food had been set out, and that all the doors were closed. It's like they had all just ran away all at once, but all the doors were closed. So, what actually happened? So anyways, they got into the logbooks of what happened on the island, of what the people wrote that disappeared, and it looked like the people were slowly going more insane each day. At one point, they had said that this bad storm had blown in, and it was really strange because nobody right next to them on the coast said that there was any storm at all. So it was a really strange situation. In the logbooks, they said it was bad the first day. Next day, they were like, it's really, really bad. People have started to cry that were there. The 3 lighthouse keepers, one of them started to cry. And then the next day, they were all praying because the storm had just gotten so bad. And then finally, the last day that the log was written, it said the storm had ceased and that God was all that remained. So this led people to think that they were maybe being judged by God or some sort of supernatural situation. It's just all around a really weird thing. So what did happen? The men seemed to just disappear. All the doors were shut. The food was set. They had written in their logbooks every day saying that this storm that seemingly didn't exist was on them for 3 days and then disappeared. So kind of like in the movie The Lighthouse, it seemed like they were just going insane. I feel like this is something that happens to people that are in a cramped area for a certain amount of time. If you think about it, this was in like December. This was a really cold time. I'm sure they were indoors all the time, and maybe that's what just drove them to go insane. Other people think that they were being judged, like I said before, and other people say that this was like a supernatural monster that was inflicting torment upon them. This Flannan Islands area is just completely riddled with stories about sea monsters and, you know, the Loch Ness Monster is close to there. Lots of stories about sirens and mermaids. There's even like this siren story from that area that says that it'll like read rhymes to you, and if you fail, they'll eat you. It's just an all-around strange place. So, did the Kraken get him? Probably. Anyways, let's move on to the last one, and that is, where do eels come from? So I'm talking specifically about European eels. This is just really weird. People don't know where European eels come from. So while scientists have kind of figured out where some eels come from, they have not figured out where these European eels come from at all. People have been puzzled where eels developed for centuries, like Aristotle and Sigmund Freud, but why? They have no idea how they reproduce. And modern scientists still questions where they really come from. The reason why they had such a hard time figuring out where eels come from is just because they couldn't find any male reproductive organs. People in the past came up with different theories, like Aristotle concluded that eels emerged spontaneously from mud and rainwater, while others theorized that they began their lives as beetles, and some believe that eels were born from sea foam and were created when the rays of sun fell on different kinds of dew that covered lake shores and riverbeds in the springtime. Some also think that they were born when their hairs from horses fell into the water. That was like an ancient story. Sigmund Freud actually tried to crack the mystery. He spent months in Italy in the town of Trieste. There he got eels from fishermen and dissected them, searching for the male's reproductive organs. Some think that he dissected as many as 400 and still didn't find anything until he eventually gave up. About 10 years later, in 1886, a French zoologist watched a leptocephalus morph into an eel inside of a tank in his office. This discovery proved that these eels were metamorphic and that they go through 6 distinct stages throughout their life. So it turns out that eels only grow reproductive organs at the last stage of their life cycle, which is when they leave the freshwater environments and travel thousands of miles to the Sargasso Sea. The crazy thing is, no one has ever seen European eels mate in the Sargasso Sea, and no one has even seen adult European eels there at all. So the only reason that they believe that they're there is because the first stage of the eels, whenever they're before the metamorphosis, are found there in the Sargasso Sea. Which is so strange. So where are they going? Are they going super deep? Are they spawning from volcanoes down there? I mean, nobody knows. They're probably spawned from mud and rainwater, if we're all being honest. But anyways, with all the mysteries in the ocean, it's no wonder that so many people are just horrified of it and truly see so much mystery and unknown stuff with every aspect of the ocean. I mean, when you think about 71% of the Earth being covered up by water and 80% of that ocean never being mapped, and then also scientists thinking that there's nearly 90% of the ocean species that have never been discovered, it makes you realize that there's so much to find in Discovery. It's a really mysterious place. From the old legends of sea monsters to all the ancient civilizations that are probably still out there beneath the waves. I mean, think of Heracleon, think of the eels that we don't know where they come from. One would think that such a simple subject like where eels come from would be something that we could figure out, but when it comes to the ocean, we just don't even know. Anyways, that is the end of the Ocean Mystery Iceberg. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end. You guys are great. If you've stuck around this far, consider subscribing. You guys have been great to me. This series has been my favorite by far of any series I've done. I want to do more like this. I want to do more like iceberg type things, other strange mysteries, and just interesting subjects. So if you guys have any ideas, drop them in the comments and I will be reading every single one. But from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for watching. My wife has done a great job going through all this information and helping me find it and learn it. We've been traveling a whole lot. As you can see, we're in a trailer park area in Arizona. We're going to go see the ocean at the West Coast. We're really excited for that. So anyways, I hope you guys have a great day and I hope you enjoyed this series. The bloop is real. Thank you. Goodbye.